Iowa's News Now Sports brings you Black and Gold Glory, your all-access pass to all things Hawkeyes. This is Eye on the Hawks.
And all eyes on number 12, Cade McNamara, back on the field with a helmet and pads, the whole 9 yards for Iowa football. Team sharing that on Twitter and social media yesterday, confirmed by SID Matt Weitzel. That is a current photo, so Cade McNamara did return to practice just as we get into game week 2023 for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Welcome to Eye on the Hawks as we get into our season previews. Mitch Fick with Owen Sebring and Mike Howell. We've all been building to this. Cade McNamara coming back, and certainly something that we were hoping for if you're a Hawkeye fan, to get Cade back before the start of the game week against Utah State. Been a lot of snaps taken by Deacon Hill in the interim. Got it plenty in the spring as well as Cade was coming back from surgery. But Owen Kirk said he was hopeful that not just Cade, but Joey Labus would be back to get back into that quarterback 2 or 3 spot. Seems like, knock on wood, we don't have any wood near the desk. I think this is maybe some type of wood. Anyways, all hope that people are healthy and we're doing well as we get into game week.
One thing you said there was that he's back in helmet and pads. Is he wearing pads? I can't see from this.
Sure, yeah.
angle. I mean,
That's true. They're just in shirts and shells,
helmet,
yeah.
But nevertheless, if he's out there, I have to imagine it was not an accident that they.
This wasn't just for the gram, yeah.
That they included Cade in that picture, which did surprise me a little bit, honestly, because I'd been thinking all along, especially you and I had talked about that video that Shannon, our colleague from KCCI, had posted this last week, where she's sitting down with Cade McNamara and he just kind of gives a brief answer about, it's coming along. That's all I'll say about it. I really thought, we would not know if he was going to play until Saturday at 11 a.m. I thought that, it was going to be right down to the wire that we didn't know if he was going to be out there or not.
People did not know what to think of that. And I don't know if it's just the stir-crazy late August stuff we need to have definition or got to have something to comment on, but people, boy, they dissected that little statement from Cade during that interview with Shannon as much as you could. But hey, 12's back out there. Still don't have his official status, but I imagine that's a better step forward than backwards, certainly. So, again, one of the positives, if you want to take anything from Cade missing a couple weeks after that open scrimmage injury to his right leg there, is that Deacon Hill does get some quality time with the ones. And, boy, if you can get your backup some good time like that, of course, again, in the spring got plenty of time too, it helps out a little bit. So here's Kirk Ferentz last Tuesday talking about the benefits of that, and then voicing his opinions on 7-on-7 football as well.
To get Deacon reps with the ones, is it some sort of benefit?
Yeah, it is. It's been great. And, Joe, I think, will be back here at the end of the week, too. It's been great at both those guys, because Marco's been getting the 2s, and he's done a nice job. You always look for a positive, and that has been the positive. And, you think about him, he hasn't played since 20, which I think he was in high school then. So there's just, it's like anybody. You got to operate and you got to go. And I can say the same thing about Cade. Cade needs work with our team right now because he basically was out last fall. So there's that timing part, and not to be anti 7-on-7, but I do hate 7-on-7. Okay, the proliferation of 7-on-7, guys can't take a snap under center, and it's not real football, because in real football, guys are rushing you, and if they hit you, they might really hit you, and we don't tackle our guys. I'm starting to think maybe we should have the quarterbacks, just to give them a sense that, like, it's real out there. Like, these guys are going to try to knock your head off if they can. So, but anyway, yeah, all this practice is going to be, it's been helpful for him, and Cade needs some too.
Kirk said at Media Day, I'm almost direct quoting here, I'm a senior citizen, I'll say whatever the hell I want now. It's shown up a little bit these last week and a half or so. He's voiced his opinion on a lot of different things. Certainly on the gambling investigation, we'll get to in a little bit. But speaking of injuries and learning more about those, one of the bigger announcements for the Big Ten over this past weekend is 2 hours before kickoff, I believe it is, Mike, now, we're going to start getting injury reports. We're wondering maybe if this will apply to the non-con schedule or just once we get into the Big Ten season. But there are going to be actual injury reports giving a little more guidance on who's in, who's out, who's what kind of status. Again, in this world of gambling, that's one of the big reasons for that. But that's a big deal because we're always looking around during pregame of like, okay, who's out there, who's in, who's in sweats, what's going on there. A little more information is probably going to be good.
Do you think you mentioned the gambling stuff? Do you think that that's the primary reason why this is gambling? I mean,
I think it. Mike, if I'm wrong, I don't know if you have it pulled up. I think it even says something about like transparency for that.
Yeah, I got the CBS report pulled
Yeah.
up right now.
It's just interesting that, like, again, with all the discussion about gambling and students being in trouble for gambling in the offseason, that it's like the Big Ten is enacting policy to help the gamblers right now, right?
Yeah,
Like,
it's
I think that's irony.
Full season too. This what this report make.
okay.
me believe,
So I'd imagine, okay, then we'll have that on Saturday as well. Well, yeah, as gambling does seem to make the world go around more and more in this world, that Kirk continues to talk about how much it's changing, and this being one of the big things, certainly on the college football side. Again, the big news coming out of Tuesday, when we still didn't know exactly about Cade's status, is that Noah Shannon, because of his involvement in this probe, right now is suspended for all of 2023. Yeah. Just such a tough spot for a guy who, you alluded to this last week too, made the decision to come back for another year, and you wonder, boy, well, what if he didn't and was in the pros right now? But that's the situation here. And again, a hit to one of Iowa's deeper spots on the defensive line, but man, you just can't help but feel for Noah Shannon, no matter the circumstance, no matter what you condone or don't condone about involvement. Just an immensely tough spot for everything that we've heard, for just a fantastic human being on top of everything.
Yeah, I have to imagine that even he himself has been thinking about, like, gosh, what if I had made that decision and gone to the NFL and just like, none of this would be coming up. My name would be still, have that positive reputation behind it. That's tough for him, because the only thing we ever hear about Noah Shannon is positive, glowing remarks. This is only, conjecture on our part, but one thing that Kirk said was that, how did he put it about, like, he just got caught up in
the emotion, which again, we don't know what Noah bet on, anything like that. It from Kirk's phrasing of it made it sound like maybe a certain team made a really deep run in some sort of tournament. Listen, again, if you're a 22-year-old kid, because 22-year-olds, that's a legal adult age, but we were all 22, and I can't think of how immature I could be at sometimes 15 years ago, or making decisions where you just don't think about it, and especially getting caught up in the emotion. And it's a tough spot, and you're not thinking about your eligibility. You want to support your school. Again, we do know it was a team at the University of Iowa, and kid just clicked a button on his phone, as far as we know. And
Kirk clearly spends a lot of time thinking about it, because every time he speaks about it, I feel like I'm impressed with some piece of understanding, or like something that he's really thought about it, and it's definitely been a thought out issue for him. And one of those things was just that, like, kids can commit a lot of crimes and they will get less of a suspension than this, and Noah didn't even commit a crime.
Exactly.
The other guys, really fair point, that it's like, how is he getting suspended for a year when there are other guys who commit a literal crime and get less of a suspension than this?
Yeah, I mean, as we've talked about, there are student athletes involved in this probe that are accused of committing crimes because of their age and using somebody else's identity to acquire a betting account. He's of age.
Yeah, Noah's not one of those.
Placed a legal bet. He just violated an NCAA, or is accused of violating an NCAA policy. So here's Kirk on Noah, and then we'll get into a little more of what Kirk thinks about this whole investigation at Iowa and Iowa State. But here's Kirk on Noah.
I think it's punitive, me personally, and I'm hopeful that they'll reconsider his case. And I don't want to say I'm confident, but I would assume at some point they're going to reshape what they announced back late April and early May in terms of the policy moving forward, just because, similar to the drug testing policy, it's radically different than it was 2 years ago, and our culture is radically different as a country. So, I'm hopeful that they'll catch up maybe in their thinking a little bit as it pertains to Noah. And, again, I can't say enough about him. And it just, he committed a lot of other crimes. He hasn't committed a crime. He could commit crimes and get a lot less of a punishment, which seems kind of funny in some ways.
With Noah, did the ncaa give you any rationale for why it was so
I've seen nothing in writing. Yeah, so I know he bet on one of our other sports teams here, and I understand that that may be a bad thing. He bet for them, and I'm guessing he got caught up in the emotion. And again, I just I don't do this stuff, but it's on their phones. People are enticing him with apparently $300 credit if you go with us. All that stuff. I think it's just time to really recognize the world these guys are living in, and maybe be a little bit compassionate towards that.
Yeah, he alluded to the accessibility. We've talked about this on here before. Just, you can order dinner and place $20 on the Hawks to win it's right next to each other. It's so simple, and there are the guidelines of not betting on your own school, which you can understand. These student athletes mingle together, but it also feels like, again, to Kirk's point, not condoning anything. The guidelines are the guidelines. Any college student could possibly have that information if you are friends with these players and teams. You get what the NCAA is doing to try to preserve integrity and make sure everything's on the up and up. But yeah, just an immensely tough spot, especially for a kid who wasn't betting on his own team. Certainly, a team that he probably had friends on, but it's a difficult spot.
Yeah, I would imagine, to Kirk's point about just rules changes, I mean, I think that it's possible even within a year from now, there's some rules changes about this that we see that is really going to affect things, and it makes it, in hindsight, is going to make it harder on these guys like Noah and the Hawkeyes that get in trouble, because it's like they just were a year ahead of the curve.
Yep, because someone had to be first, and it is certainly Iowa, and of course everything going on at Iowa State, which really makes Iowa's situation pale in comparison quite a bit. But Kirk Ferentz, we've heard quite a bit about what he has thought about all of this and why Iowa and Iowa State. Here's some more of his thoughts on the not just the NCAA investigation, but of course the DCI probe as well.
I guess it's our bad luck, because as far as I understand, it's a state thing. Why those two universities only were targeted? And my guess is we could probably fill, maybe not Phil Kinnick, we couldn't Phil Kinnick, but probably could Phil Kinnick with all the college student athletes or students that have gambled. And again, I understand we're compliant to the NCAA rules. I get that, but I just think probably needs to be rethought a little bit and modernized. It's on their phones. People are enticing them with apparently, $300 credit if you go with us. All that stuff. I think it's just time to really recognize the world these guys are living in, and maybe be a little bit compassionate towards that. I can't imagine we're the only state where college kids bet. I just can't imagine that. I mean, seriously, that's like rounding up 20-year-olds that had a beer. So that would Phil Kinnick. I know that, and so for whatever reason, we're the lucky ones. We're the chosen ones. We just got to really benefit from this whole deal. And I'm really not sure what the point was. And I have a respect for the law. Don't misunderstand that. A high respect for the law, but I'm not sure I understand, what happened. So but that's not the issue. The issue is if somebody bet on us. That to me is the issue, and that is an issue, and nobody's running from that. Totally on that. Just like anything else. I mean, nobody's running from that one.
Every analogy falls apart at some point. There's no perfect analogy in the world, but Kirk's analogies about drinking, I do think, are a really nice, good way to at least think about it in terms of why we're, being so stringent about these rules. But again, somebody who drinks a beer under the age of 21, I mean, we just take it as rote. Like that's just a kind of a fact of life. But this we're being so serious about.
It's someone had to be first, like I said, and I think everything we've heard is that DCI got some sort of tip, and that led to the investigation. So, and that's what it comes down to. Why are you first? Because the other 49 states that maybe have an ability to do this didn't have somebody say something to the proper authorities. I know when you try to think about what do you do about this moving forward, we'll see from the NCAA in the years to come in terms of that. I don't think we'll get into a situation where like they have in Illinois, where in the state of Illinois you can't bet on the University of Illinois and those athletics. Much to the chagrin of people I know who live in Illinois who want to come NCAA tournament time or things like that, or you have an Illinois team that made a nice run in the Big Ten West last year. I don't think you can take that away in the state of Iowa, betting on Iowa athletics because of the lack of pro sports here. I mean, that's such a huge driver in the fall and winter and spring, are Iowa athletics, betting on those. I do think it's just a wait and see of what the NCAA wants to do. If they pull back their regulations at all, that you can bet on sports that you aren't participating in at your school, you just can't bet on yours. I mean, that's certainly the big one that everyone's watching. It's why Arlen Bruce is the biggest name to come out of this, because of how frequently he was betting on Iowa football during 21 and 22. But for right now, the three guys that we do know that are still on the roster at Iowa, Shannon, Jack Johnson, and Aaron Blum, who are both charged with tampering for being underage and having those accounts, they're still all on the roster. So it's really wait and see. We might know in the next 48 hours as we get into Tuesday and talk to Kirk and the players for the first time what the scenario will be going into the season.
Yeah, that's true. Whatever happens next, I mean, it's just hard to say what it's going to be going forward, because since they legalized gambling in Iowa, the money has just poured in. I mean, it's incredible the amount of money that this has provided, and so it's hard to ever think, like you say, about not allowing gambling on the Illini. Doing that in Iowa would just be, I mean, the amount of money would really scale back so much that there's just no way they could ever do that. But
It's big enough that I did a special report going into Super Bowl Sunday of 2020, which was the first Super Bowl that you could bet on in the state of Iowa. August 15th, 2019 is when sports wagering went on, and the books even alluded to the fact that there's a lot of action on Iowa football, to the point where if Iowa covers the spread more often than not in a month, that's a bad month for the books, because a lot of people, I mean, Iowa nowadays, the joke is, yeah, you're going to bet the under, but a lot of Iowa fans aren't going to bet against the Hawks.
Yeah.
And so if Iowa's covering spreads and winning games, that's not good for the books.
I don't know how much more time we want to spend on this, but maybe this will be the last thing, just to see like what your guys' opinion is, because I'm still not sure where I land on how I think that they should proceed when it comes to Iowa athletes. Obviously, gambling on your own sport, like your own team, like definitely, like that's got to be, for sure, verboten. But when it comes to a Hawkeye athlete gambling on another Hawkeye team, somebody putting some money on the Final Four or whatever when it's the Hawkeyes playing there, do you guys think that should be forbidden as well, or should that be allowable if it's not your sport but it's at your same university?
And it's tough.
I side on the side of, it shouldn't be allowed, just because you'd think that they would know, or they have the possibility of knowing players, and are friends with them. They know if say Kate Martin's hurt and we don't know about it, they would know that, oh, I think, tonight she's going to have she's nursing an injury. This is hypothetical, obviously, but those are the kind of things that I think of,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. Like I said, any college student could know this stuff that goes to class, could have that insider info. Anybody else that's on that campus talking to these recruits, but it's different. I mean, it's accept the responsibility of you're an NCAA student athlete.
Not to mention the fact that, like, I don't know, I have to imagine that there are rules around this that I could probably look up, but like, what about athletic trainers? I mean, they could put down some money on a game because of an injury that they know about, but and there probably are rules against that, but
there are. Yeah, I think there's a Iowa football, not a trainer, but not a staff member that is involved somehow.
Yeah.
I don't want to misreport it, but
a manager, yeah.
all those people, the trainers, anyone in the program, they cannot bet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Let's put that in the past as much as we can until we get more updates. Let's move to the 2023 season. It is game week. Utah State comes to town, so we'll get into that Thursday more so about just the game itself and what we learn in Tuesday's pregame interviews and whatnot. But we want to get into kind of the overview of the 2023 season, going through our picks for guys that are going to break out, some bold predictions, things like that, game by game, what we see. So we will get into it here. We'll start, though, of course, the focal point for 2023 is seeing improvement in the Iowa offense. Owen and Mike, who are your 2023 picks for Iowa's offensive MVP?
Let's start with you, Owen,
Okay.
just because I have the graphic ready.
Yeah. I went maybe a little bit outside of what some people might expect. Everybody's talking about Cade and the shiny new toys, the new additions. My offensive MVP is Caleb Johnson.
Guess who my offensive MVP is? We'll get to that in a little bit.
JJ?
I totally agree, but go ahead.
Yeah. I just think that people are overlooking him a little bit right now, if that's possible, just because of all the new additions that we've seen in the offseason, talking about, Cade and talking about Seth and the other Caleb that joined the roster. But I think that, he was so good last year in so many games, and I think that was just kind of his breakout season, and now he's going to be, he could put up some potential for a lot of Big Ten honors, I think, this year. Was he like, what was it last year? Big Ten all freshman team or something like that?
Pretty sure he made the freshman. He was, let's see, looking it up. Honorable mention freshman All-American by College Football News. Honorable mention All Big Ten.
Yeah.
Was Offensive Player of the Week, Freshman of the Week for that 200-yard game at Purdue.
And so I suppose you can see now all of my predictions for the season up on the screen. So, yeah, Caleb Johnson, offensive MVP, defensive MVP, maybe a little bit less of a surprise. Cooper DeJean, I think that with all of his preseason All-America honors that are coming in. Cedar Rapids Kennedy super fan, Cooper DeJean.
Saw him there
on the
last night,
sideline last night. breakout player. I don't know. I just have got a good feeling about Seth with the experience he brings to the team. I think that he's going to really be a crucial addition to the offense. Bold prediction for this season. I don't know. I always got a player finish.
Sure.
Is that bold? I don't know. That's a bold prediction, right?
When was the last time Iowa had a guy in the top 10 for the Heisman?
Was Sean Green in the
Probably would have been Sean, yeah.
top
right.
10?
So 15
I think
years.
so. He wasn't invited.
Sean was top 10. He was like 6 or something.
Yeah, he was just outside the invited, so it was him.
Yeah. So
God, it's been 15 years since Sean Green went.
And I think I just put Iowa as a player just because I didn't want to commit to somebody entirely, because there's maybe a few players that it could be.
Sure.
I think that Caleb Johnson could be that guy. I think that Cade McNamara could be.
Cooper
that
could
guy.
easily be that guy then.
Yep, Cooper could be that guy. That was my next thought. So anyway, but yeah, I think that if the offense produces as much as we're hoping and thinking that it could with Cade, I think that they could have somebody that really turns into a nationwide breakout star this year.
That's the hope. Mike, you want to go or should I? I can take it. All right, go ahead.
Here's mine. I think offensive MVP. I kind of went. I don't think this is a bold prediction, but Cade McNamara. It's been a while since we had a quarterback who could, beat teams downfield.
Yeah.
Since Nate Stanley, I think if he does come in and produce the way I think he can, then I think it's going to be night and day, the offense. So I think that's why I picked him. I think Deontay Craig is going to step up, and my bold prediction is him having double-digit sacks. I looked it up, and in the last 15, 20 years, only 3 players have done that. AJ did it twice, and Claiborne in 09, Adrian Claiborne.
Huh.
So when you look at the sack totals and the stats every year, it's always like 6, 6, 6. A lot of guys have several sacks, but I think he gets over the 10 double-digit mark.
Wow.
And my breakout player is Aaron Graves. I assume
that.
he's going to start for Noah Shannon, and he was kind of all over the place at Kids Day. We all know he's a beast, so I think he's going to be a stud this year.
Love that pick. I keep kind of forgetting about Aaron Graves, just because of all the other names that are floating around out there. I kind of forget that he played a decent amount last year, but you're right. He could have a great breakout season. My favorite fact about Aaron Graves was that he had a college diploma before he had a
Graduated high school, yeah.
diploma.
He's the Tony Stark of Iowa football. Just the smartest kid. He's incredible, and shooting up the I think some of the weight room charts too. He's just a strong kid and smart. He's tough to stop. All right, so most of my stuff's already been picked, but here we go. My offensive MVP again, Caleb Johnson. Man, he didn't get a ton of carries in the first few games either, and to put up almost 800 yards and 6 touchdowns. Iowa hasn't had a 1,000-yard rusher since 21, so it hasn't been that long. But Tyler Goodson had a great year. It'd be great to see a guy go 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns. It's probably maybe been since Sean, since Iowa's had something like that. Would be pretty impressive. Joe Evans is my defensive MVP. Again, talk about a guy who has just been steady and consistent. Last year's technically his first year starting on the line, but he's 18.5 career sacks. He had 6, I believe. Let me see what we got. He has like 13 or 14 in the last couple of years, though. I mean, he's just
kind of a bold prediction. Just again, somebody that nobody's
Sure.
really talking about on the defense.
yeah,
side.
and that's
So, I
and
respect
again,
it.
and again maybe it's within the team award, a guy who's just been there for years and years and is always consistent. Maybe has an opportunity. We've seen. I mean that play against Ohio State where he just shoves down C.J. Stroud and takes the ball away. He's a dude that can make plays and. So Joe Evans would be my guy who maybe is the one who's tying that whole defense together. Breakout player, again, can't argue with Seth Anderson. He's got speed. He showed so much during that scrimmage. It'd be a good outside threat. Even with Nico and Deontay, I think going to be the steady stalwarts there. Everyone's going to be hyped about Caleb Brown and what he could eventually do. But I think Seth's the proven commodity who could come in and really make some noise there. Eric All's probably going to get some numbers too, so we can throw him in there as well. Yaha Black are on this same reasons for Aaron Graves. He's going to be able to rotate into that D-line. I think he's going to be something special. Maybe not to the level of Davion Nixon and what he was. People forget about Davion Nixon there in 2020. Dude
legend.
made noise. I think Yaha's set up the Pride of Marshall, Minnesota, maybe having some big there. And then my bold prediction, with some context, Jamari Harris coming back off that injury that made him miss all of 2022. I think he has more picks than Cooper. This is partially the kind of the Desmond King, Riley Moss conundrum, if you want to call it that, where teams just aren't going to bother throwing that way. Desmond had 8 picks in 2015. I think he had 3 in 16. Riley had his big year in 21. He had 1 pick last year, and it was that diving one behind him off the tip against Wisconsin. I think teams are just going to look away from Cooper, and unfortunately, the only other option they're going to have is Jamari, who, again, was playing as well as anybody at the end of 2021. So this is not a knock on Jamari, be like, oh, we're going to pick on him because he's the lesser of the two. They're just going to avoid Cooper at all costs, and Jamari, we saw that pick he had against Cade in the scrimmage. High point in the ball, he's so good. Jamari's going to be really, really good. He could end up being the defensive MVP too. I didn't pick him just because I wanted to pick somebody else, but Jamari's going to have a year, I think.
Yeah, it's funny. As I was even making that prediction for defensive MVP with Cooper DeJean, that was my only caveat. I was like, and I even thought about Desmond King, Desmond King factor, where it's like, he's come back and everybody knows about Cooper DeJean and all his preseason accolades. So it's like people are just not going to throw the ball his direction. But the only thing working for his favor is the fact that you do have Jamar Harris on the other side. And so, again, pick your poison. There's just a lot of danger in that secondary, as we've talked on this podcast about previously.
Wonderful problem for Iowa to have. Too many good people in the secondary. I'm surprised none of us picked Xavier Wampa. I think my rationale, at least for not being breakout or anything, was just he's a 5-star, and it's just kind of been assumed that he'll be great eventually. We saw the flashes in the Music City Bowl. No disrespect to the X. We would never do that.
I had the same thought. Like, I was like, hey, do I put Xavier up there? And I'm like, well, it wouldn't really, to me, I guess I don't want to say I'm expecting him to be breakout, but if he does break out, it's like, okay, that's what I thought he was going to do because he's so talented.
We're just contrarians. We just want to go against the grain.
I could very much see it being last year. If we're making the last year comparison, Cooper DeJean is Riley Moss and Xavier Wampa is Cooper DeJean.
Sure.
Where, people are avoiding him, and Xavier's the guy who, has some pick sixes and gets a lot of INTs this year.
There are so many guys on that defense that could break out. Again, Jay Higgins, I've pumped him up a bunch. I think Nick Jackson, again.
Yeah. Nick was probably my second choice there for
It's
defense.
tough to take him breakout because he's got 320 tackles in college. He could easily be MVP. Quinn Schulte is a really popular pick for one of the best safeties in the league right now. So it could be anybody that does that. Again, Iowa defense, 7, 8, 9 guys. Sebastian Castro could be another breakout. Again, there's no wrong answers here, so that's good because I think we covered a lot of space. Mike, you've got some questions you wanted to throw at us and then some trivia too, so
let's shift back to the offense. I was just looking up, that's the big ticket item that people want to know about. So I was looking at some stats. Caleb Jackson had 762 yards rushing last season as a freshman. Do you guys think he rushes for 1,000 yards, that one marker every year?
Since he's our offensive MVP both, I would say yes, yeah.
I'd be shocked if he doesn't reach 1,000 this year, I guess. If he stays healthy, I don't see any way he doesn't reach 1,000.
Yeah, I think, I won't say easily because LaShawn's going to get his carries. He had that long touchdown run in the scrimmage, so he can do it. I know that Jazz Patterson flashed a lot in Music City Bowl. They really like Kamari Moulton. I don't know if he'll get some good non-con reps, but they've got options, but it's Caleb's show.
Another possible caveat there is that it could be more all-purpose yards than rushing yards because again, if Cade likes to throw a lot, Caleb seems like a back that could do some short hits and catch the ball out of the backfield too.
I think a lot of this is going to come down to Hayden Large too. I get 6'5" fullback moving over from tight end, coming from Dort. There's been a few shots in camp videos that they released where, he found his leverage and he was getting down and laying some nice blocks. So I think as Hayden goes, as they try to replace Monty Pottebaum, that running attack too. But we've seen good stuff, and the O-line's a year more experienced, so it does feel like kind of the perfect storm to have a really big year for Caleb. So I'll say, definitely over 1,000.
This question leads me to my Hawkeye trivia question, and I had some graphics, but I forgot to import them, so I'm just going to say it. We're talking about, Caleb Johnson and Sean Williams being that kind of dynamic duo. Maybe Williams has some of his yards. I was looking at some stats throughout the years, and there's only one season where Iowa had 2 running backs each get 1,000 yards. So can you name the duo and the year they did it?
It'd be Freddie and Jamel, right?
No.
What?
A little sooner than that.
A little sooner than that?
Yeah.
More recent?
More recent, yes. I was kind of shocked at this.
2,000-yard backs on the same team?
Yeah.
Is it Kanzeri and LaShawn?
LaShawn is right, but not Kanzeri.
And Akram?
Daniels,
Yeah.
and Akram, yep. In
So
2016,
2016.
yep. They Akram Wadley had 1,081 yards, and LaShawn Daniels had 1,058 yards. There's been a couple of years where, there was like 800, 900, like they almost had.
Yeah, sure.
But I look back on that team, I'm like, dang, we had that, or Iowa had that much rushing, and that was the year after the 2015 season. So I don't remember the record.
That was the year where,
it was like 8-4, I think.
Yeah, they ended really, really strong, and then Florida housed them in the bowl game. But that was the big. Akram had that big cutback run against Nebraska. I think it was right before Riley McCarron had the long touchdown pass. I mean, that team closed so strong because it was shadows of '08, because I think they were 5-4 when Michigan came in, and they went on the Keith Duncan field goal, and that was kind of the spark of ending the rest of the regular season strong. It just didn't end same way '08 did, blowing out South Carolina in the Outback Bowl. This was a little tougher pill to swallow at the end of 16, but yeah, boy. So 7 years then it's been since 2,000-yard backs. It's interesting. Should I get into my trivia then?
Yeah, why don't you take it?
Okay, so this is a season opening trivia. So this is going to be Kirk Ferentz's 25th season opener as Iowa head coach. In the past 24 season openers for the Iowa offense, how many times on their first possession of the season has Iowa's offense scored a touchdown, opening drive of the season?
Scored a touchdown. Opening drive.
Not last year. I would probably say 10. Is that high?
Okay, guess?
I was going to go low. I'll say 2.
9 times in season openers has Iowa scored on their very first possession: 2001, 2002, 2005, 2008, 2010, 2014, 15, 16, and 2021. Now,
And again, that's touchdown, right?
this is a touchdown,
Wow.
not a field goal, touchdown. Break down how many passing, how many rushing out of those 9.
9 rushing.
Guess?
Yeah, I'll go with my original number: 2 rushing, 8 passing.
There has never been a passing touchdown on
Whoa.
Iowa's opening possession under the Kirk Ferentz era.
That's wild.
Wow.
I was
They
kind
were
of
scored by-
guessing that as a joke, but
Not seriously,
Iowa
but
usually
seriously.
plays an FCS or a low-level MAC team,
Yeah.
and why would you want to open your playbook up?
Can't
I
show
don't-
him too much. Can't show him too much. Jeremy Allen, Freddie Russell, Marcus Schnorr, Sean Green, Adam Robinson, LaShawn Daniels, C.J. Beathard, LaShawn Daniels, and Tyler Goodson have had those season-opening rushing touchdowns. In fact, in the first quarter of Iowa's 24 season openers under Kirk Ferentz, they have only had 4 passing touchdowns total. And in pure Iowa fashion, only one of those has been to a wide receiver. 2008, Jake Christensen to Brandon Myers, tight end. 2006, Drew Tate to Albert Young, running back. 2005, Drew Tate to Clinton Solomon, there's our wide receiver. And 2003, Nathan Chandler to Aaron Mickens, a fullback. In the veins, please.
Brandon Myers had a cup of coffee in the NFL.
Yeah, nice little stretch there for sure. And as we've talked about, Clinton Solomon, he was an indoor football league MVP at age 35, like 6 or 7 years ago in the CIF or whatever it was. Dude, he's kind of
One of
gets
my
swallowed up
favorite
because it's 20 years
players when I
later.
was-
He's
when I was
great.
growing up.
He's so
What's
so
that?
fun to go back and watch.
He was one of my favorite players when I was growing up watching the Hawks. Yeah.
There's an argument he's maybe the number right behind Marvin, the number 2 wide receiver in the Ferentz era.
Yeah.
Wow.
He's so good. He's so good. Eddie Hinkle, of course, right up there too. But all right, you've got a few more trivia questions here, Mike.
Yeah. Less trivia questions and then more like
Not trivia,
prediction,
yeah,
yeah.
just
speaking of throwing touchdowns, Iowa, I was looking at some more stats and has had a QB throw for 2,500 yards 3 times, only 3 times in the past decade. Do you think Cade gets that this year? That's kind of like the barometer, I think, when I was looking at the stats, is 2,500 yards.
I think he's right around there, maybe 24. Because again, I think it's Caleb's offense, so to speak. They're going to run. He's just going to be about efficiency and completing short to intermediate passes. I'm not going to be mad if he goes over 2,500 yards, but I'm going to assume those seasons have been. You said over the last decade,
Yes.
so I'd say at least 2 of those are Stanleys, right?
I
18,
believe
19,
so.
18, 19.
18 he did, and 19 he
And then I'd say, I don't even know if, one of them's probably Rudolph's, 13 or 14.
It was CJ's. in
Was it CJ
2015,
in
yeah.
15? Okay, he
He had
did.
2,800 yards.
He had 2,800. He just didn't throw for that many touchdowns, right?
17.
17, yeah.
Not 20 marker, which is a lot on an Iowa team.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so I'll say he does, but not by much, and I don't think it's considered a quote-unquote failure if he only throws for like 24.
Yeah.
Because I think he'll be more efficient.
Yeah.
My thought.
And again, they've got so many other weapons on the offense. With
Exactly,
Caleb
yeah.
there, it's like, can you have how do you have a 1,000-yard rusher and 2,500 yard? I mean,
Yep.
obviously you can, but it gets tough when you have
At
a
Iowa?
discount.
If you have a balanced offense and he goes, 21, and Caleb has over 1,000, LaShawn has 500 to 800. Like, I don't think anyone's complaining about that.
Do you guys think that Cade can have 1,000 yards by the end of week 4?
So through Utah State, Iowa State, Western Michigan, and Penn State,
Yeah.
average 250 a game. I would assume, again, that he won't play all of Utah State or Western Michigan. So I'm going to say he won't be over 1,000.
I'm going to say he won't, and also because Iowa State and Penn State are the two probably best defenses Iowa's going to play all season. Iowa State's defense should still be solid, and Penn State's got some athletes.
I think if he can be between 700 and 800, that's good.
Yeah. Okay. I think it could. Yeah.
He could.
I really could see them letting him uncork a few in those Utah State and Western Michigan games, especially let him really air it out on a number of plays. So I could see him get close to 300 yards maybe. In
Hashtag let Cade cook.
Yeah.
I wonder if that would be, if they do that just so when you play those good defenses, they're not going to stack the box and be like, okay, we have to respect this offense. Where in the past 2 years, maybe teams didn't, and that would open up the running game in those games.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
All right.
Last question.
Last question. I was looking over. Iowa's defense is ridiculous when it comes to turnovers. They've had 40 INTs the past 2 seasons, 15 last year, 25 the year before. 25 is a ridiculous number.
25 is an insane number.
They led the nation in defensive touchdowns too last year. They were tied with one other team with 6. Can they continue that production? It's almost like crazy that they do.
I don't think they can do 20. 25 was just, it started right against Indiana. Riley has 2 pick sixes. It just started and didn't stop.
Yeah.
I think they can find the middle ground again, though, in there. Have, 17, 18. Again, Jamari coming back is going to be huge. Xavier I think we're all predicting will have a nice year. We saw more depth from the secondary show out in the scrimmage. Deshaun Lee had a couple of really nice plays. TJ Hall had a really great pick off a tip. Luke Lachey kind of got hit as he was catching and bobbled it, and TJ scooped it off just before it hit the ground and made a great pick. So, I think the ball hawk tradition continued. Quinn Schulte, I think, only has 1 career interception. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a few more sitting back there playing center field, being a quarterback, reading the offense the way he does.
I don't know if you'd consider this a bold prediction based on Iowa defense, but I guess I could say I could see Iowa defense getting over 20 interceptions this year. Between the amount of guys we've talked about in the secondary, a lot of athleticism in that linebacking group. I think the 20's are attainable number with what they've got coming back.
I'd say that's bold just because of the number, but
Yeah.
I could see it happening too.
Yeah, it's one of those.
Yeah.
They did 25 2 years ago. What's
The only thing
stopping
that would maybe keep it from being that point is based on the offenses that they face. When they get into Big Ten play, if they're facing a lot of run-heavy offenses, they might just not see a lot of passes thrown their way, I guess.
We'll see.
We'll add one more air raid on the schedule with
There you go. That's going to be a big one in Madison coming up there in October. All right, we're going to do Iowa game-by-game predictions, or do we just kind of pare this down to season records? I guess I can do.
We can do game by game. I have some graphics, and we just went through. I did the first 3, second 3,
Sure.
third 3.
Cool. All right, let's
Let's put them on the screen. The first 3, not really. We all have Iowa going 3-0.
Contrarians, there you go.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say it's going to be a cakewalk. I think Western Michigan in a few years is going to be really good under their new head coach. I don't know what to think of Iowa State just with everything they're dealing with on the gambling side. I think we can all agree, though, Utah State will be, I think to your point, Owen, could be a chance to maybe step on the gas a little bit and
Give the fans something
flash
to
a little bit,
enjoy.
but also are you going to be a little more protective of Cade, make sure, okay, like here he gets, 15 pass attempts, then give the rest to Deacon. But yeah, I don't think Iowa's going to have any trouble in the non-con.
I remember you and I and Curtis, when we were driving either to or from Dallas, we were kind of going through game-by-game predictions
Yeah.
for Iowa football, and I initially had the Iowa State game as a loss for
did, yeah.
Iowa, because I really thought that Hunter Deckers was going to have another big year, and he was going to really break out and put up some big numbers. But yeah, with all the turmoil going on at Iowa State, it's like No, I think that they're think that their time has passed, possibly.
For sure.
So yeah, pretty easy first 3 weeks, I have to imagine.
So we stopped playing the names, but
Yeah.
you know, with all the starters there, they lost like 4 from the gambling thing. Isaiah or Jarrell Brock was a stud.
Yeah.
He's gone. So
Yeah.
We'll see. And then the following 3 weeks certainly get a little tougher as you get in the league at Penn State. Yep, I figured we'd all be on the same page. That's just so tough to go into Happy Valley against that team. Penn
I
State's
think they're
gonna be
legit
really good.
national title contenders.
They're very good. Michigan State winning at home, and then Purdue on homecoming. I think I think Spartans will be a little better than they were last year. I think Purdue could still be steady. Hudson Card's going to be a good quarterback for the Boilermakers, even with the shift over from the Brom era. But yeah, I think those are two wins that Iowa can get on the Peacock debut against Michigan State too. Again, not an ad for Peacock, but that's where that game will be.
Yeah.
And then
Michigan State is one that I kind of thought about as a possible loss, just as one of those games that Iowa just kind of has those games every year, as every Big Ten team does, where it's a game where you kind of think it's going to be a win, and then just gets a little bit stickier than you think. And so Michigan State could be a troublesome game, but
We'll see
especially if they're coming off a loss from Penn State, maybe there's more
Sure.
motivation there. I don't know.
Michigan State's quarterback situation, I think they're still figuring out. Shame on me if they've had some updates and I haven't figured that out. But Peyton Thorne's gone there, so I think they're still working on who's under center and in shotgun for the Spartans. So we'll see what they figure out. I'm sure it'll be figured out by the end of September when they come in. As for the back half of the schedule, again, Wisconsin, you're heading to Madison. That's a big one to start the back half of the season. Owen's got them as a loss. It wouldn't shock me. Shock me.
More or less, I do think that this year will largely come down to the Iowa-Wisconsin game, as it does seemingly every year. And I think that the home field advantage is what kind of seals it for Wisconsin. Just kind of, I mean, Wisconsin's got a lot of great defensive players coming back this year. I know they're losing some weapons on offense, but a lot of defense coming back, and so they're going to be another team that's probably the toughest, outside of Penn State, obviously the toughest Big Ten game on Iowa's schedule. And so I don't know. I think that's going to be a tough one for Iowa on the road.
Mike, you went with Iowa at Madison. Your rationale?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a toss-up. I don't have much more analysis than that. I'm
too much away,
interested to see how Wisconsin plays this year. They got a new coach, new offense. They do have some weapons, though. Is it Braylon Allen? He's like a Heisman contender or on the
Good
short
running
list
back
right
anyway,
now.
yeah.
Tanner Mordecai threw for like 8,000 yards. I know it's going to be a little different system, but if their first 6 games that offense gets chugging along, it will be a tough matchup.
Yeah.
But I just need to see them do it against Big Ten competition before I let Wisconsin, put them as a loss.
Never thought we'd say it's going to come down to, for the Heartland Trophy, Iowa's secondary against Wisconsin's passing game. But again, as Kirk says, it's a new world we live in. I'm surprised you guys are going with the Gophers. This was a tough one for me, too. Again, that game back in Iowa City for the Battle of the Florida Rosedale. Minnesota has not beat Iowa under P.J. Fleck. They're due, certainly. It's wild that they've beat Wisconsin as
Part of
many
the
times as
reason
they
why
have.
I had them, the extra juice that
Sure.
PJ's going to want this one.
Yeah.
I think Iowa's won like 8 in a row.
Yeah.
Those
Going back
streaks
to
do not happen a lot. I think Iowa is a better team, but I just think the Gophers catch us.
Yeah.
Or catch Iowa.
It's not much to do with it other than the it's due factor. Just that PJ even said that the other day, that a lot of people at the Minnesota State Fair have been asking him, when are you going to beat
That's the
Iowa? When are you
question,
gonna beat
yeah.
the Hawkeyes, and it's got to happen eventually. And I could see this being the year that it happens.
If it was in Minnesota, I think I would take, because Minnesota's going to be my number 2 team in the Big Ten West. They're good. Cadillac Manis is, again, after getting knocked around by Iowa, he went into Madison the next week. Again, not the Madison, the standard the Badgers have had the last couple of years. He threw for 300 yards in that game as a redshirt freshman, going into Madison and helping Minnesota win the act. He's a really good quarterback. They're going to have Sean Tyler, a transfer from Western Michigan, coming in for the running back. He was a 1,000-yard rusher in the MAC. He's going to be good with Bryce Williams, who's backed up every great running back at Minnesota the last few years. So they're going to be tough. Bryn Spanford's probably the best tight end in the league, I would say. Minnesota's going to have weapons, but it's at Iowa. BJ, you're my guy. I want you to get the trophy eventually. I just don't think it'll be this year. Moving on to Northwestern, where
Any
everybody says
L's? Any L's over this next block?
I don't have any.
Okay.
I had
Wow,
Illinois.
that
I think
guy.
Illinois is underrated in the Big Ten. Their defensive
tough.
line is one of the best in the conference, and they've got a lot of talent on the defense. You know, that would put us at 2. That would put Iowa at 2 home losses, which, you know, I guess might seem unlikely, but there's always games where it seems like
These are all going to be one-score games.
yeah,
Either
the-
way,
the
right?
toss-ups. You could probably add, you know, depending on Nebraska.
Nebraska could be good at the end of the
I
year
like
too.
Matt Rule as a coach. I
Yeah.
think he's good at least at the college level. Maybe
Yeah.
not for the Carolina Panthers, but you could throw that one in there. And if we're gonna have, if I was gonna have like 4 toss-up games, then you
It's
have
tough
have
to
a
win
few
all of them.
Yeah, you can't.
I'm very going glass half full. If you've done the math here, I've got Iowa going 11-1, which is that loss to Penn State. So Owen, you've got them what 9-3,
Yeah.
and
And
Mike's got them
9-3.
9-3.
Nebraska was another one where I was tempted to pick Nebraska in that game, being a road game over there. I don't know. They always bring it in. I think Matt Rule's going to punch Nebraska up a little bit.
Sure.
Should we? I don't know if we should do for our audio-only listeners. I feel like we haven't done a good job
Well, yeah.
of actually saying what our predictions are.
Please
for
watch
these
on
games.
YouTube.
Yeah.
We've had graphics up and everything. Just a reminder, if you are only listening to this, if you go to the YouTube channel, we've got, with the power of television, that's
Iowa's News Now.
Iowa's News
on
Now, the YouTube channel, or just if you search Eye on the Hawks, these should start popping up. Some of the old ones might as well. But yeah, we've got all sorts of pretty graphics and videos and sound bites for you to watch as well. So, all right, I would say, yeah, if they finish anywhere between 9-3 and 11-1, that's considered a good year. Anytime you can win 9 in the regular season, that's a big deal. If they fall to 8-4 or something like that, I think that's when you're pulling the collar a little bit. It's not
Yeah.
not great.
That was kind of my next question. I wonder if 9-3 is let's say 90% of Hawkeye Nation pleased with 9-3.
Depends on where you're finishing in the West, I suppose. I think
Yeah.
that's going to be the decider. Is 9-3 good enough to win the West? You could argue it. I know Wisconsin only plays Ohio State.
Correct, yeah.
Question mark. Minnesota plays both Ohio State and Michigan. I think they host Michigan and go to Columbus. Wisconsin, I think, do they host the Buckeyes? I'm
Pulling
pretty
their
sure.
schedule up. They host the Buckeyes, and the other crossovers, Rutgers and Indiana, at Indiana.
You'd think I would look this up or at least have it definitively in my head.
fine.
But why would I do that? But yeah, Minnesota has.
So they get the 2 weakest teams in the East, and arguably one of the best.
So Minnesota, I believe, hosts Michigan. My big shock of the year, if you want to call it that, is that Minnesota beats Michigan. I think
Little brown jug, right?
it's Minnesota hasn't had the little brown and juggernaut. Again, it's wild that for the longest time Minnesota couldn't win Paul Bunyan's Axe, and they had some gut-wrenching losses to Wisconsin in that. And now they've won it a couple times under PJ, and so I wouldn't be shocked if that's kind of their 2019 Penn State game where
Minnesota's crossovers are tough.
they do have a tough schedule, but that team's
At home against Michigan, at home against Michigan State, and then on the road in Columbus.
yeah, that'll be tough. I think they lose. I think they lose to Ohio State. I think they might drop another one in there. They could drop the Michigan game, but
It's a good transition to get into the Big
Seriously
Ten West.
all right, let's look at our West standings. We just kind of picked the order we think everything will go. Mike, how do you got these?
I got you going first.
Me first. So, yeah, at 11-1, I have Iowa winning the Big Ten West. Minnesota, again, even with that tough schedule, I think they're going to be really good. So I've got them number 2. Again, it could come down to that game in Iowa City deciding things. Wisconsin, I think by the back end, maybe November, they'll be really, really tough as that offense really starts clicking, but I've got them 3rd. Illinois, people are sleeping on them. Jim Leonard, even though he's not officially on staff, I think he'll have a really good impact on that defense. Offense, I think, will find some stuff as well. So they're 4th. They could easily interchange with Illinois. Again, Hudson Card's going to help that Purdue offense move on from the era. They just came out of Nebraska, maybe a year away with Rule as they get things settled in the Northwestern. You hope for the best there. Ben Bryant, a Cincinnati transfer, who's obviously had success with the Bearcats. He's their quarterback. So I don't think they're going to finish 11-1. I think they'll win a game on U.S. soil this year, but just everything going on in Evanston, I think they're your last place team in the West.
I had some interesting
All right,
conversations with some folks when I was at the City High Joliet Catholic game the other night.
Oh,
Just
sure.
A little bit of insight on the Northwestern stuff. Just about them telling me about all the guys that are leaving, and they've got some Joliet Catholic alums that are playing for Northwestern. And
Sure.
tough deal. Okay, yeah, I'm doing my best just not to be a complete Iowa homer on this podcast, even though I'm not, I don't consider myself an Iowa homer at least, but just not buying into all the hype behind Cade and the offense and everything this year. So that's partially why I picked Wisconsin to win the Big Ten West. Going back to the game that I said that I predicted them to lose in Madison. I think that's, again, like I said, what it's going to come down to in the Big Ten West. So Wisconsin 1, Iowa 2. I put Nebraska 3 again, just kind of trying to believe in Matt Rule. This might just come from living in Sioux City for a few years and hearing a lot of the Nebraska hype that I just keep thinking that they're, just a year away from turning the corner and being nationally relevant again. And so maybe thinking that Matt Rule is going to come in and, potentially be a Big Ten Coach of the Year candidate based on what he does. And so I could see them, making a push there for the reasons, like I said, Minnesota up there, Illinois. I don't really know much what to think about Purdue, I guess, but I kind of got that. I mean, I think it's going to be similar to last year, where it's like there's just a lot of a log jam in the middle there, where from Purdue to Nebraska could be just 1 week could move somebody from 3rd to 6th in the Big Ten West, and Northwestern at the bottom, as any smart analyst would pick right now.
Mike, what do you got?
I have Wisconsin win the West.
All right.
Mainly because I do consider myself a Hawkeye fan. If I had Iowa winning, I would jinx
I
it.
would consider you a Hawkeye fan too. That's funny.
I didn't want to jinx it, so I got Iowa 2, Illinois 3. Again, I think they're underrated. We saw last year when they played Iowa, very good defense, and all throughout the season, I think they had an 8-5 year. I think they do around the same next year or this season. Minnesota at 4, Nebraska at 5. I do think Nebraska's a year away at contending. There's no divisions next year, but if there are some sort of, I don't know how they're going to do the schedule, to be honest, but I think they'll be in that top 4 or 5 in the second or third year of Rules era. Purdue at 6 and Northwestern at 7. I think we were all agreeing on Northwestern.
To the East.
I'll start with the East. I think Michigan, they went to the playoff last year. They bring back, McCarthy and Blake Corum. I think they're going to win the East. I think that any of those 3 teams, I got Michigan 1, Penn State 2, Ohio State 3.
Wow.
Any of those 3 teams I think could win, and it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me if they all ended up like 11-1 and they all lost against each other as well. Maryland with Tua's brother. What's his name?
Tagovailoa. That's his last name.
Yeah.
Talia, I think.
Yeah, Talia. He's good. He's going to put Maryland 4th. Michigan State at 5. I just don't know what to expect of the Spartans.
Yeah.
Are they going to be 2 years ago, Michigan State with 10 wins, or 11 wins, how many they had, or last year's where they won 4 games? Rutgers at 6, Indiana at 7.
Any reason why Indiana's at the bottom? I mean, just I don't know how much you know about them. I don't know very much.
I think
but-
Rutgers. I mean, both teams have a tough schedule because they have to play in the East. But I do like, Shiano's back, and I think he's a decent head coach. I like the head coach more than Indiana's, and I'm blanking on whoever that is.
Tom.
Yeah, I
Boy.
think so.
We're getting exposed.
Listen.
It's early, kind of.
This is a Hawkeye podcast.
I was
not a
going to
Hoosiers.
say, I think that Indiana had a new coach this year. I think they fired their own
Who's
one.
going to get there first? Where's it?
Tom Allen. Yeah, I was right. I want to say Tom Herman. I knew that wasn't right. It's Tom Allen, guys.
Tom Allen.
I knew that.
Yeah.
Everybody knew that. All right. Well, now that
Seventh
we've
season, we should know that. By
now that we've really established how much we know about this, let's continue our Big East predictions with me. Yes, that's West.
Oh,
Big East.
there we go.
There we go. Mike and I had a pact. I thought that we were both going to pick Penn State, but things have changed. That backfield for Penn State, I think Drew Aller is hyped up. I think it's a bit, not a down year because they'll still be really good, but Michigan and Ohio State, Ohio State's trying to find their new quarterback. I think that's tough. I think it's tough for Michigan to keep things elevated. Listen, Harbaugh being out for the first 3 games isn't a huge deal in the long term, but I think something will just be off with Michigan. I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm just trying to pick something different and new, but I think Penn State wins the East. Like you said, Mike, I think if things click, they could be a playoff team and challenge whoever else for the national title. Maryland 4th for the same reason, and then Michigan State, Rutgers, Indiana for mostly the same reasons. Indiana coached by Tom Allen. I want to remember that. Tom.
Never
Allen.
heard of him. Okay.
I knew his first name was Tom. I just,
Yeah, the only reason I went off the Penn State thing is I went game through game yesterday when I was watching the Notre Dame game. Once I had them all, I'm like, oh, Penn State has more losses than or no, they each were 11-1, and I had Michigan beating them. So I was like, well, if I'm
Sure.
true to myself, if Michigan's going to win, then they're going to have tiebreaker.
Again, it same like the West. It could be Iowa or Wisconsin. Minnesota again could get hot too. It could be Michigan, or Michigan, Penn State, or Ohio State.
Yeah.
Like none of that's going to surprise anybody.
I think the reason too was Penn State plays at Michigan. They have Ohio State at home. So I believe if that's the case, those are the easiest win
Sure.
would be against Ohio State. All right, let's go with Owen's Big Ten East predictions.
Hello, Buckeyes at the top. Yeah, I liked Ohio State. Just another maybe bold Big Ten prediction. Maybe not too bold because he's got a lot of hype, but I think Marvin Harrison Jr. could be Heisman possible winner this year. I mean, he's incredible. So, yeah, I think I like Ohio State. Michigan, I think I had the same thought as you kind of vocalized, Mitch, just about them having a little something off. I mean, Harbaugh's going to be missing the first 3 games.
Yeah. Not that that's going to have a huge once you get in the league. I
Right.
don't think it'll matter, but it's just
Vibes are off, man.
These
Vibes are off.
Well, these last 2 years that they've won the Big Ten. I mean, remember those years before? They were right there. It took a fumbled snap against Michigan State in 20. There was just always something, and I'm not looking into a crystal ball and predicting some sort of random doom, but it always felt like amid the chaos of the season, something would happen that would throw something off. I don't know who J.J. McCarthy's backup is now, but like say J.J. gets hurt, Cade's not there anymore.
Yeah.
They're gonna have to have somebody else. So not again. Just it feels like there's always something. Things have been great these last 2 years. Maybe it could be something.
Yeah,
So
nothing-
and Penn State's good. Penn State's really really good.
Nothing against Penn State. I've got them third. I mean, yeah, that could go anywhere from first to third. Who knows? Michigan State, just kind of on pedigree alone, I put there at fourth. They're a team that even after a tough year, they could come back and be a team that is respectable, makes a decent bowl game. Bottom 3, Tom Allen's boys, put them in fifth. To see if I can expose this any further, can you guys name Maryland's head football coach?
Mike X starts with an E. I forgot it. Mike Loxley.
Oh, there you go.
There we go.
Nice
Not,
job.
it doesn't start with an E. It starts with an L.
It does not start with an E.
We've taken a lot of L's today as we learn about the Big Ten East coaching staff.
And then Maryland and Rutgers, just, whatever. Those teams are not going to be all that good. All right.
Well, now that we've established our, boy, that's rough. That's rough. We got a lot to show.
To be fair, Iowa podcast, we're looking at the Big Ten West.
Come on.
And we don't Iowa doesn't play Maryland.
Yeah, what am I supposed to know about Rutgers football? Give me a break.
They do play Rutgers.
Oh, that's true.
Oh boy. All right. Well, we need to put a ball on this thing ASAP. Then, do we want to get into recruiting notes? Do we want to do anything else with to wrap this thing up?
Yeah. Week 1 of the high school football season was just this past weekend. I know I went to a game, Central City versus Winfield Mount Union, with a couple of D1 prospects. Cam Buffington was just the real deal. I mean, it was 8-man football, but when I got there, they were down 10, and he just scored 3 touchdowns like throughout the course of the game. It was he was just a man amongst boys out there.
Let's talk high school football because this is, I feel like, where my knowledge is. You guys know all the Hawkeye stuff. I know the high school stuff. Cam Buffington is going to be like, it's going to be this year. As we've talked about, the Winfield Mountain Union has 2 Division I talents on the gosh, just look at him at linebacker.
We should note that he is we're playing some video right now for the video YouTube podcast.
Yeah.
He is he's a backer recruit, right? That's what he's committed to Iowa as.
He is planning on linebacking.
He plays running back as well.
But yeah, he's a running back and just going to shred some defenses this year. Well-spoken kid. They've got another kid on the team, Abram Edwards, who's going to play tight end at Army. I didn't know much about him coming in this year. Their coach told me that he put on 30 pounds in the offseason, so he's bulked up quite a bit. But, another situation where it's like if a team just somehow manages to contain Cam Buffington on some certain week, then you've got Abram Edwards to deal with, and that's going to be tough. But Buffington, that was against a team that Central City was, I think, ranked like 3rd in the state in the preseason polls. They're good 8-man.
I think they were ranked ahead of. Weren't they ranked ahead of Winfield, or was Winfield
I
second?
think they were 3 and Winfield was 4th.
Yeah.
Good
game.
Yeah, he's a fun kid. I talked to him a little bit in preseason. Good personality. Fun guy to talk to. He's going to be some enjoyable fall this year. I don't know how much we're going to actually get a chance to see of them, just because they're a little bit far away. That's a good hour down the road in Just Settles territory. Yeah, he's going to be a fun team to follow, and I imagine we'll be seeing them in the Dome come early November.
Totally, and he's already committed to the Hawks, but one who's not, but he's on Iowa's radar. He's pretty much on everyone's radar. You got to watch him, right? I won last night.
Nick Brooks,
Kennedy
yeah.
Dowling.
Yeah. I went to the Kennedy Dowling game, and as I was shooting offensive highlights for Kennedy, I feel like 75% of my clips were just following Nick Brooks to see what he did.
I got the video you posted on Twitter. At Owen Sebring, he posted a highlight clip of just even in 5A, was clearly the biggest guy. Just the size of him was very impressive.
Comparing him both to Dowling and Kennedy, the rest of their lineup, I'm just like, this kid is just a giant.
Dowling's one of the
He
best.
doesn't even look
programs
like
in the
he's
state.
trying. It's effortless.
Yeah. I mean,
And I know he's trying.
yeah, you have to think so, because there's always the argument. I mean, we're going to talk about Cody Fox in a little bit, but Cody Fox does some of these same things, but it's against Class A competition, which is very different than what he's going to face in the Big Ten. But again, Nick Brooks is doing this against not just a 5A team, but Dowling Catholic, who's perennially absolutely one of the best teams in Iowa. Won what was it, 7-8 championships in a row, something like that.
Yeah.
And always a semifinalist, and so he's doing this against guys who probably are a lot of future Division I players.
Very impressive performance from him, yeah. And then
6'8", 350. I mean, holy smokes.
His weight room numbers already are just.
It is amusing. I mean,
They'll have to. If he goes to Iowa, they'll just have to build a whole new wall. I mean, that kid's going to be unreal. Wherever he goes, they'll probably have to.
Mike, you were saying you were there last night, and it is just incredible just to see him. It's just comical seeing him get amongst high school players, just because he is just truly a giant.
when I first got there pregame, I was like, all right, I didn't have a roster. I'm like, all right,
I think I got him.
I have his rivals page open right now, and just he has offers from Alabama, Auburn, Florida, Georgia, all the, Ohio State, Penn State, 25 offers.
We unfortunately didn't get a chance to talk to him in the preseason. Curtis Fader went out and did the preview for them, and he was not at practice that day. I don't know if he was on a visit somewhere or what was going on, but he just wasn't there, so I didn't get a chance to chat with him. So, I know, but seems like a really solid kid with a good head on his shoulders. Has good relationships with the media. I mean, he goes around and fist bumping guys that he's talked to, or waving at guys that have interviewed him or taken pictures in the past. So he's just a fun kid to follow, and he would very much ingratiate himself to Iowa fans if he were to pick the Hawkeyes, just based on the last big offensive line recruit that went down south to Alabama. He could really make a good name for himself.
I believe is starting on Alabama's O-line.
Is that right?
Yeah, I think
man.
that's the word out of Tuscaloosa. Yeah. Another big recruit that you got to see earlier this year, went to the practice at least. Cody Fox. I know people are really excited about him.
Who they took an L on Friday night, actually. Yeah, lost to Sumner Fredericksburg. I think I saw it was the very last play of the game. Sumner Fredericksburg scored a touchdown, and then they ended up winning it in overtime. Yeah. So a tough way to go to lose your first game. I really thought East Buck was going to be a potential title contender too. But, yeah, Cody Fox, another big kid that, when I first showed up at practice, I'm like, okay, I think I've got an idea who I'm looking for here. Very tall. Just, I loved seeing this. You could see it out of him in practice, and his coaches talked about it too, just how he was such a strong leader on the team, encouraging others, helping teach some of the younger kids. Very vocal leader, not just a guy that goes out there and does his own thing. He's, like you see there, he's fist bumping people, and he's helping the guys out around him. So he's a guy that could, if the talent is there at Iowa, he could be a team captain in a couple of years too, because of his leadership abilities, I think, as well. The comparisons to Robert Gallery are natural, just with.
There's a lot of East Buck players that played at Iowa, right?
What's that?
A lot of East Buck players that actually went on and played at Iowa, right?
Well, yeah, mostly out of just two families, between Robert Gallery and, was it Nick? Is that his older brother's name? Nick Gallery? Who's the punter?
Right, yeah.
And then Cody Fox's older brother, I don't think ever actually saw any on-field action, but he was on the roster at Iowa. And yeah, he too is just a giant that's going to push around a lot of Class A offenses or Class A defenses this year. And Cody Fox also led East Buck in tackles, I think, last season, so he's a good defensive lineman as well. But he'll be playing OT at Iowa. He lines up at right guard for East Buchanan, just based on the style of offense that they run. That's kind of the just best position for him. But imagine they'll move him outside to tackle once he gets to Iowa City.
Well, real quick wrap up with shifting to women's basketball recruiting. A big win for Bluders Bunch. Journey Houston's going to be a Hawkeye.
Yeah. I haven't had a chance to see her or talk much to some of the folks that cover her down in the Quad Cities. We got some footage of her playing for Davenport North. I think it is maybe one of the most impressive things that she just finished her sophomore season, and she last year averaged 18 points, 9 rebounds a game, led them to the Class 5A state quarterfinals, which when you're playing for a public school in Davenport, there are not a lot of teams that are making the state tournament out of that area, and so her being able to lead that team to a 21-3 record and get them to state is a big accomplishment just as a sophomore.
So much excitement over women's basketball. You got Fry Fest coming up on Friday. I think they've got a women's basketball autograph session from like 5 to 6. I can't imagine what the line is going to be like for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll be live down there. So hopefully show you that. And, of course, tickets still selling for the crossover at Kinnick. It feels more and more like they're going to fill that place up. That's going to be something special.
Yeah, I can't wait for that. I actually bought 3 tickets to that before. I don't know if it's what I was reading on Twitter is that the tickets were going like hotcakes when they started selling them. But it's awesome to see that this Final Four run is leading to what is she? She's a 5-star on ESPN. The future's bright, and can that wave of Caitlin Clark in the last 6 years of women's basketball excellence, can that turn Iowa into a powerhouse with the names of Tennessee and UConn? That's the goal, and if you keep getting more recruits like this, 5 stars, that's it'd be interesting to see over the next 10 years if they can actually do that.
I think Journey was number 19 in the country, something
It's
like
up there,
I'd love to see it. I have a hard time seeing it become Tennessee UConn level of excellence, but I would, again, if the recruiting continues and this play continues, I could see them becoming maybe like a Stanford or something that, picks up a natty somewhere in there and is always at least like a Elite 8 contender, something like that.
Just keep winning Big Ten titles. That's
Nothing wrong with that.
Start there, go anywhere.
Nothing wrong with being Stanford.
We'll see, though. For next time, though, we won't be talking about Stanford, of course. We'll be talking about Utah State and Iowa football as we get ready for the season opener. We've filled up plenty of time. We've learned a lot about what we know and don't know about the names of some coaches in different divisions. We will be better. It's early. We'll watch some film. And we'll keep hashing things out and moving on to next week. We will see you guys Thursday on Eye on the Hawks. We'll break down that season opener against Utah State. We'll hear from Farron's and company on Tuesday, and we'll bring you those sound bites too. And then remember, next Sunday, when we get into the game analysis of Utah State, we'll have a live stream on YouTube. Please watch that as we break down that game. Send your comments. School us on what we do and don't know. Much obliged. So for ONC bringing Mike Howell, I'm Mitch Fick. We will see you on Thursday as we get ready to kick off 2023 on Eye on the Hawks.